Greek contact with Persia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. The Hellenistic Far East from imperial conquest to cultural fusion and gradual fading. The arrival of Greek and Macedonian forces under Alexander the Great, 334 to 323 BCE, marked the first sustained European contact with the civilizations of the Persian Empire, the Afghan highlands, and the Indus Valley, long before any colonial era. What began as brutal conquest evolved into something far more enduring, a vast Hellenistic network that stretched from the Mediterranean to the banks of the Indus and beyond. This article traces the full arc: initial separation enforced by Alexander's successors, the Diadochi, the political fracture that birthed independent Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kingdoms, the profound cultural mingling that produced bilingual administration, religious syncretism, and the revolutionary Gandharan artistic tradition, and finally the gradual fading of distinct Greek political control amid waves of Central Asian invasions. Drawing on classical sources, Arrian, Strabo, Plutarch, Justin, archaeological evidence from Ai-Khanoum, Taxila Sirkap, Pushkalavati and Begram, numismatic studies, and seminal scholarship such as W. W. Tarns, The Greeks in Bactria and India, 1951, A.K. Narain's The Indo-Greeks, 1957, Frank Holt's Thundering Zeus, 1999, Osmond Boperachchi's Monais Greco-Bactrianes et Indo-Grecs, 1991, and Rachel Mayer's The Archaeology of the Hellenistic Far East, 2011. The analysis shows that this encounter was never mere imposition. It was a dynamic fusion that transformed both Greek and local cultures, leaving legacies in art, urbanism, religion, and statecraft that outlasted Greek rule by centuries. In the territories of modern Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, this was Europe's earliest deep engagement with the East, predating Portuguese, British, or any later colonial projects by more than 2 millennia, and it produced synthesis rather than subjugation. Introduction: the first European thrust into the East. When Alexander crossed the Hellespont in 334 BCE, he did not simply defeat the Achaemenid Persian Empire. He opened the first direct, large-scale corridor between European civilization and the ancient worlds of Persia, Bactria, Afghanistan, Arachosia, and the Indian subcontinent. By 330 BCE, he had burned Persepolis, ending 220 years of Achaemenid rule. By 327 BCE, he was marching through the Hindu Kush passes into what is now Afghanistan, founding Alexandria in the Caucasus, near modern Begram, and subduing the fierce mountain tribes of the Parapamisidae. In 326 BCE, he crossed the Indus, defeated King Porus at the Hydaspes, Jhelum River, in present-day Pakistan, and pushed eastward to the Beas River before his exhausted troops mutinied. Historians estimate that Alexander left behind or settled between 60,000 and 80,000 Greeks, Macedonians and allies, soldiers, veterans, administrators, merchants and camp followers, in dozens of new or refounded cities. These Alexandrias were not mere garrisons. They were deliberate transplants of the Greek polis model into alien soil. The most famous was Alexandria in Egypt, but in the east, cities like Alexandria in Aria, modern Herat, Afghanistan, Alexandria in Arachosia, Kandahar, and Alexandria in the Caucasus, Begram, served as strategic centres. For the first time, European settlers lived permanently among Iranians, Bactrians, Gandharans, and Punjabis. Unlike the later colonial empires that extracted resources while maintaining rigid racial barriers, the Hellenistic experiment began with separation, but quickly pivoted toward integration. The Seleucid successors inherited a fragile eastern frontier. The Mauryan Empire under Chandragupta, whom Seleucus I confronted around 305 BCE, received vast territories west of the Indus in exchange for 500 war elephants and a marriage alliance. This treaty itself reveals the limits of Greek power and the necessity of negotiation with Indian kings. The story that follows is therefore not merely one of conquest, but of contact, fracture, fusion, and eventual fading, Europe's earliest laboratory of East-West encounter on Asian soil. Phase 1. The Diadochi and the Architecture of Ethnic Separation, 323 to 250 BCE. Alexander's death in Babylon in 323 BCE triggered 40 years of savage warfare among his generals. In the east, Seleucus I Nicator emerged as the dominant figure, founding the Seleucid Empire that initially controlled the Iranian plateau, Afghanistan, and parts of Pakistan. Seleucus and his early successors deliberately maintained a policy of Hellenic separation to preserve their fragile authority over millions of non-Greeks. The Seleucid imperial model, administrative continuity with the Achaemenids was retained, satrapies, royal roads, and tax systems, but the upper echelons were staffed almost exclusively by Macedonians and Greeks. Greek became the language of law, coinage, and elite communication. New cities were founded or refounded as autonomous poleis with Greek constitutions, boulai, councils, ecclesiae, assemblies, gymnasia, theatres, and temples to Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and Heracles. In Afghanistan, Ai-Khanoum, founded circa 280 BCE on the Oxus River, is the most spectacular surviving example. French excavations, 1960s to 1970s, revealed a perfectly Greek city, a 6,000-seat theatre, with a layout echoing that of the theatre at Epidaurus, a gymnasium whose walls bore a copy of a Delphic maxim. As children, learn good manners. As young men, control your passions. As adults, be just. As old men, be wise. At the end, have no regrets. A library containing Greek philosophical papyri, Corinthian columns, a heroine, hero shrine, possibly for the city's founder, Cineas, and a temple to a syncretic Zeus Mithra. The presence of a vast arsenal and the remains of papyri showing Greek poetry, including fragments of a philosophical dialogue, attest to a sophisticated and military-oriented society. In Pakistan, Alexandria on the Indus, possibly near modern Uk Sharif or Attock, and the replanning of Taxila created islands of Hellenism. At Taxila's Sirkap Mound, excavated by John Marshall and later teams, the Hellenistic stratum shows a strict Hippodamian grid, Greek-style houses with courtyards, stowers, and a shrine to Dionysus. Intermarriage was officially discouraged among the military elite. Greek settlers worshipped their own gods, while local populations continued Buddhist, Hindu, and Zoroastrian practices. This separation was pragmatic imperialism. A small ruling minority, perhaps 5 to 10% of the population in the East, needed cultural cohesion to govern. As W. W. Tarn noted, the Seleucids treated the eastern satrapies as a military reservoir and a buffer against nomadic threats from the steppe. Yet cracks were already visible. Seleucus had ceded large eastern territories to Chandragupta Maurya, and by the reign of Antiochus I, 281 to 261 BCE, the Mauryan edicts of Ashoka, inscribed in Greek and Aramaic at Kandahar in Afghanistan, show that Greeks, Jonas, were already living peacefully inside Indian-ruled areas and being addressed in their own language. The Kandahar bilingual edict, proclaiming Ashoka's policy of Dhamma, piety, is the first known Greek-inscribed text found in Afghanistan and testifies to a Greek-speaking community of some significance. Phase 2. The Fracture of the East. Birth of the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, circa 250 to 180 BCE. By the mid-3rd century BCE, the Seleucid Empire's centre of gravity had shifted westward to fight Ptolemaic Egypt and, later, Rome. The eastern satraps, feeling abandoned and facing pressure from nomadic tribes, revolted. Around 250 BCE, Deodatus I, Seleucid satrap of Bactria, declared independence, striking coins that replaced the Seleucid anchor with his own portrait. The Greco-Bactrian kingdom, centered in the fertile Oxus Valley of northern Afghanistan, became one of the richest Hellenistic states. Its capital, Bactra, modern Balkh, and cities such as Ai-Khanoum flourished with Greek irrigation systems, silver mining, and trade along the incipient Silk Road. The reign of Euthydemus, the kingdom's early kings, Deodatus I and II, Euthydemus I, faced constant nomadic pressure from the north. Euthydemus, an Ionian from Magnesia, overthrew Deodatus II and consolidated power. He famously withstood a 3-year siege by the Seleucid king Antiochus III the Great, 208 to 206 BCE, who had come east to reclaim the rebellious satrapies. The siege ended in a negotiated peace. Antiochus recognized Euthydemus as king, and in return, Euthydemus provided war elephants and support for Seleucid campaigns. This treaty effectively confirmed Bactrian independence. Euthydemus's son, Demetrius I, circa 200 to 180 BCE, then crossed the Hindu Kush after the Mauryan Empire collapsed following Ashoka's death. He conquered the Kabul Valley, Gandhara, Peshawar region, and much of the Punjab in Pakistan, founding or refounding cities such as Demetrius in Arachosia and possibly Sagala, Sialkot. For the first time, Greek kings ruled directly over a majority Indian population without the Seleucid imperial umbrella. This political isolation forced the transition from separation to mingling. As Frank Holt observes, the Greco-Bactrians could no longer expect reinforcements from Antioch or Seleucia. Survival required local alliances, Indian recruits, and cultural adaptation. Phase 3. The Indo-Greek kingdoms and the historic moment of mingling, circa 180 to 10 BCE. The Indo-Greek period, lasting roughly 2 centuries, represents the high point of fusion. After Demetrius, the kingdom fragmented into multiple parallel lines of kings, some ruling from Taxila or Pushkalavati in Pakistan, others from the Kabul Valley or even further east towards Mathura. More than 40 kings are known primarily from coins, a testament to the richness of numismatic evidence, which allows modern scholars to reconstruct dynastic sequences with remarkable precision. 1. Administrative and military integration. Greek rulers adopted bilingual coinage almost immediately. Early issues showed pure Greek types, Athena, Alkidamos, Heracles. Later coins of kings such as Apollodotus I, Antialcidas, and Menander I bear Greek legends on the obverse, King Menander, Saviour, and Prakrit in Kharoshthi, script on the reverse, Maharajasa Tratarasa Menandrasa. This was practical governance. Soldiers and merchants needed to understand royal proclamations. Armies became hybrid. Greek phalanxes, wearing bronze helmets found in Taxila, fought alongside Indian war elephants and light cavalry. Greek officers commanded mixed units. Indian nobles received Greek titles and land grants. Taxila Sirkap's later layers show Indian-style stupas rising beside Greek temples with Ionic columns. The Indica of the Greek historian Apollodorus of Artemita, preserved in Strabo's Geographica, mentions that the Indo-Greeks extended their rule as far as the Ganges and city of Pataliputra, modern Patna, a claim debated but reflecting the expansive ambitions of these kings. 2. Religious syncretism and patronage. Greek kings actively patronized local faiths to legitimize rule. The most famous example is Menander I. Melinda reigned circa 165 to 130 BCE, whose capital was Sagala in the Punjab, modern Pakistan. The Buddhist text Milinda Panha, The Questions of King Milinda, records a philosophical dialogue between the king and the monk Nagasena, covering topics like the nature of the self, the path to nirvana, and Buddhist metaphysics. Menander is portrayed as converting to Buddhism and attaining arhat status. While the historicity of personal conversion is debated, the text's existence proves Greek rulers were deeply engaged with Buddhist thought. Coins of Menander show the king in a Hellenistic cuirass, but also depict Buddhist symbols like the eight-spoked wheel, Dharmachakra. Other kings honoured Indian deities. Antialcidas reigned circa 115 to 95 BCE, sent an ambassador named Heliodorus to the court of the Shunga king Pagabhadra at Vidisha in central India. The Heliodorus pillar, circa 113 BCE, still standing in Bisnagar, bears an inscription in Prakrit stating that Heliodorus, a Yonaka, Greek, from Taxila, dedicated a pillar to the god Vasudeva, Krishna, the god of gods. This is a powerful testament to a Greek official openly practicing Vaishnavite Hinduism. In Bactria, Greek kings continued to honour Zoroastrian deities, often equating Zeus with Ahura Mazda and Heracles with Verithragna. Heracles, already popular among Greeks for his eastern labours, became identified with Vajrapani, the thunderbolt-wielding protector of the Buddha, in later Buddhist iconography, an equation that originated in the Indo-Greek period. Zeus was sometimes equated with Indra. This was not superficial borrowing, it was genuine theological dialogue occurring at the highest levels of society. 3. Artistic revolution, the birth of Gandharan art. Nowhere is the fusion more visible than in the art of Gandhara. Peshawar Valley and Taxila, Pakistan. Greek sculptural techniques, contrapposto stance, realistic anatomy, flowing drapery, Hamartian, and individualized portraiture were applied to Buddhist subjects for the first time. The earliest anthropomorphic images of the Buddha, late 2nd to 1st century BCE, show him with an Apollo-like face, wavy hair in a Hellenistic topknot, Ushnisha reinterpreted, and wearing a Greek-style toga or himation, known as the Greek Himation period. Excavations at Bukhara, one in the Swat Valley, conducted by the Italian Archaeological Mission, revealed a stupa that was enlarged and adorned with Hellenistic-style decorative elements over several phases. The earliest reliefs, datable to the Indo-Greek period, show Corinthian pilasters, acanthus leaves, and scenes from the Buddha's life framed in Greek architectural settings. Stucco and schist reliefs from Taxila depict Jataka tales with Greek architectural frames, Corinthian capitals, and even centaurs and tritons alongside bodhisattvas. As Osmond Bopiracci and others have shown through coin-dated stratigraphy, this style emerged under Indo-Greek patronage and reached maturity under the subsequent Kushans. It would later travel the Silk Road to influence Buddhist art in China, Korea, and Japan. Demographically, the original Greek settler population intermarried over generations. By the time of the last Indo-Greek kings, the urban elites of Taxila and Pushkalavati were culturally Hellenistic but genetically mixed. The distinction between Yona and Indian blurred into a new Indo-Greek identity. Phase 4. Gradual fading. Invasions, assimilation, and enduring legacy, circa 130 BCE to 3rd century CE and beyond. The Indo-Greek kingdoms did not collapse overnight. They faded gradually amid successive waves of Central Asian invaders. Around 130 BCE, the Yuezhi, later the Kushans, and Scythians, Sakas, overran Bactria in Afghanistan. Ai-Khanoum was destroyed by fire around 145 BCE with evidence of a violent sack. The library was burned, the arsenal was destroyed, and the city was abandoned. The exact nature of the invaders is debated, but the city's end was definitive. In Pakistan, Indo-Scythian kings such as Maus, circa 85 BCE, began displacing Greek rulers in the Punjab and Gandhara. Greek kings lingered in pockets. Zoilos II, Apollophanes, and Strato II are among the last known, with coins dated to around 10 BCE to 10 CE. The last Indo-Greek king, Strato II, ruled only a small territory in the eastern Punjab until his kingdom was absorbed by the Kushans. Yet the fading was cultural transformation, not erasure. The Sakas and Indo-Parthians adopted Greek coin styles, Greek titles, sota, dikaios, and even the Greek language on some issues. The Persian Empire, 1st to 3rd centuries CE, founded by the Uezi, became the greatest patron of Gandharan art. Under Kanishka, circa 127 to 150 CE, stupas at Taxila, the Dharmarajaka, and Peshawar, the Kanishka stupa, reportedly the tallest building in the ancient world, were decorated with the same Greco-Buddhist style, now executed in larger scale. Kushan coins still use Greek script alongside Bactrian and Prakrit, bearing legends like Thaunanthal, King of Kings, in Greek-derived script. Greek artistic conventions, perspective, drapery folds, realistic musculature, remained standard in Gandharan art until at least the 4th century CE. In Afghanistan, Bactrian Greek urban planning influenced Kushan cities such as Begram, Kapisa, where the famous Begram treasure, ivories, glassware and bronzes, shows continued Mediterranean trade. In Persia proper, the Seleucid period and lingering Hellenistic influence under the Parthians left Greek-style temples and coinage that the Sasanians later reacted against. Yet even Sasanian rock reliefs at Nakshi-Rostam retain echoes of Hellenistic drapery. Politically, the distinct Greek presence faded. Greek names disappear from royal lists after the 1st century CE. Greek language yields to Bactrian, Prakrit, and eventually Sanskrit. Intermarriage and the absence of new Mediterranean settlers completed the process. Modern genetic studies of groups like the Kalash of northern Pakistan, who preserve some archaic Indo-European traits and claim descent from Alexander's soldiers, show West Eurasian ancestry, but no specific link to 4th century Macedonian colonists. The mixing was ancient and continuous. Epilogue: the forgotten kings and their rediscovery. For over a millennium after the last Indo-Greek king, the memory of these kingdoms faded from both European and Asian historical consciousness. In the West, the Greek conquest of the East was remembered primarily through Alexander's epic campaign, a lightning strike of conquest, not the 3 centuries Hellenistic rule that followed. The Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kings were reduced to obscure footnotes in Roman-era geographers like Strabo and Justin, their names garbled, their achievements overshadowed by the Seleucid and Ptolemaic dynasties that bordered the Mediterranean. In South Asia, the Buddhist tradition preserved a different memory. The Milinda Panha kept alive the figure of Menander as a wise king who embraced the Dharma, but his Greek identity was incidental to the text's philosophical purpose. The Heliodorus pillar stood as a silent testament to Greek devotion to Vasudeva, but its historical significance was forgotten locally until its rediscovery in 1877 by the British archaeologist Alexander Cunningham. The Indo-Greek kings became ghosts in the landscape, their cities buried, their coins waiting in the earth. The modern rediscovery of the Hellenistic Far East began in the 19th century, driven by the twin engines of colonial archaeology and numismatic scholarship. British officers and explorers in India and Afghanistan, many of them amateur antiquarians, began collecting the remarkable bilingual coins that local farmers unearthed. The coins, bearing Greek legends on one side and Prakrit in Kharoshthi on the other, presented a puzzle. Why were Greek kings ruling in the heart of the subcontinent? The British numismatist James Prinsep, known for deciphering the Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts, was among the first to identify the names of Menander, Apollodotus, and Antialcidas in the 1830s. His work laid the foundation for reconstructing the Indo-Greek dynastic sequence. The 20th century brought systematic archaeology. The French excavations at Ai-Khanoum in Afghanistan, 1964 to 1978, were a watershed. For the first time, a full Greco-Bactrian city was uncovered, revealing the material reality of Hellenistic rule in Central Asia. The discovery of the gymnasium, with its Delphic maxims, the theatre, the library, and the temple to Zeus Mithra, demonstrated that this was not a superficial colonial outpost, but a vibrant Greek city that had adapted to its environment while maintaining its cultural identity. The destruction of Ai-Khanoum during the Soviet-Afghan War, the site was looted and the excavations halted, added a tragic coda to its story. In Pakistan, the excavations at Taxila by John Marshall, 1913 to 1934, and subsequent work at Sirkap revealed the layered history of a city that had been successively Greek, Scythian, Parthian, and Kushan. The Greek stratum at Sirkap, with its grid plan and Hellenistic houses, provided direct evidence of urban life under Indo-Greek rule. The Butkara I excavations in Swat, led by Domenico Facena from 1956, established a stratigraphic chronology linking the development of Gandharan art to Indo-Greek patronage, confirming the stylistic debt of the earliest Buddhist anthropomorphic sculpture to Hellenistic models. The scholarship of the 20th century was shaped by a profound debate about the nature of the Indo-Greek encounter. W. W. Tarn, in his magisterial The Greeks in Bactria and India, 1938, revised 1951, portrayed the Indo-Greek kings as enlightened Hellenizers who brought Greek civilization to the east, with Menander as a philosopher king who embraced Buddhism out of intellectual conviction. Tarn's work, for all its erudition, reflected a colonial-era assumption that cultural influence flowed unidirectionally from Greece to the east. Ai Narain's The Indo-Greeks, 1957, offered a decisive corrective. Writing from a post-colonial perspective, Narain argued that the Indo-Greek kingdoms were fundamentally Indian kingdoms ruled by kings of Greek origin. He emphasized the rapid indigenization of the Greeks, the continuity of Indian administrative structures, and the agency of local populations in shaping the cultural synthesis. The debate between Tarn and Narain defined the field for generations, with subsequent scholarship, particularly the numismatic work of Osmond Boparachi and the archaeological syntheses of Frank Holt and Rachel Mayers, staking out a middle ground. The encounter was genuinely reciprocal, a fusion rather than an imposition. Today, the legacy of the Hellenistic Far East is contested as well as celebrated. In Afghanistan, the Taliban's destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas, 2001, and the ongoing looting of archaeological sites have erased much of the physical heritage. Ai-Khanoum, once the jewel of Hellenistic archaeology in Central Asia, lies in a conflict zone, its remaining structures damaged by decades of war. In Pakistan, the Gandharan heritage is increasingly recognized as a source of national pride, with museums in Karachi, Lahore, and Taxila housing world-class collections, though preservation efforts face challenges from urbanization and insufficient resources. Yet the story of the Hellenistic Far East endures, not as a tale of European triumph, but as a testament to the possibility of cultural synthesis. When Alexander's soldiers first laid eyes on the Indus, they could not have imagined that their descendants would build stupas for a Buddha they had never known, worship Vasudeva alongside Zeus, and strike coins in a script their ancestors could not read. The Greek kings of Bactria and India did not Hellenize the East. They were themselves transformed by it. Their kingdoms faded, but the hybrid civilization they created became the foundation for centuries of Buddhist art, Silk Road exchange, and cross-cultural encounter that shaped Asia. Conclusion: a lasting synthesis before colonialism. The Greek contact with Persia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India was Europe's first true encounter with these civilizations. 2,000 years before Vasco da Gama or the British Raj. What began as Alexander's conquest and the Diadoches policy of separation fractured into independence, then blossomed into one of history's richest cultural fusions, and finally faded through assimilation. The Indo-Greek kings did not Hellenize the East, they were themselves transformed by it, creating a hybrid civilization that combined Athenian aesthetics with Indic spirituality, Macedonian military science with Indian elephants, and Greek philosophy with Buddhist ethics. When the last Greek king struck his final coin around 10 CE, the political chapter closed, but the artistic, urban, and religious legacies continued to flourish for another 4 centuries under Kushan, Saka, and Parthian rule, and their echoes reached China and Southeast Asia. The art of Gandhara directly influenced the Buddhist art of the Silk Road in Turfan, Dunhuang, and even the earliest Buddhist images in Japan. The Milinda Panha entered the Pali Canon and remains a foundational text of Theravada Buddhism. The concept of a divine ruler surrounded by Greek artistic motifs became a model for later Indian empires, including the Guptas. This was never colonial domination in the modern sense. It was contact, conflict, compromise, and creation. In the hills of Afghanistan, the valleys of Pakistan, and the plains once ruled from Persepolis, the Hellenistic Far East proved that when Europe and Asia meet, the result can be something new, beautiful, and enduring, long before the age of empires that would later claim to civilize the same lands. The story of the Hellenistic Far East is therefore not one of Greek triumph or disappearance, but of profound and lasting transformation. The first chapter in the long dialogue between West and East, a dialogue whose artifacts still stand from the shores of the Mediterranean to the banks of the Indus. The forgotten kings of Bactria and India, once buried in the soil and in the margins of history, now speak again, not of conquest, but of a world made new through encounter.